introduce our third and final keynote speaker for the morning. Simon Margolis is a RESNA certified assistive technology professional and seating and mobility specialist. His professional career, spanning more than 35 years, includes work in public and private sector of the orthotics and prosthetics and seating and wheeled mobility industries. Simon is a past president of RESNA. He is a founding member and past president of NARTS, which is the National Registry for Rehabilitation Suppliers, and is an executive committee member of NCART, which is the National Coalition of Assistive and Rehab Technology. He served as executive director of NARTS and as a surveyor for the Joint Commission. Welcome, Mr. Margolis.
You cannot change the lighting. You're not changing
That's
the
fine.
lighting.
That's okay. Hello, everyone. Everybody take a stretch, okay? Take a minute, stand up, stretch, just whatever you want to do to feel a little bit more comfortable. That's fine like that. That's great. Thank you. I'm going to go out here for a minute and greet you up close and personal. Okay. We're going to do calisthenics now. Like heck we are. If I have to lead him. Okay, when you're ready, take a seat and we'll talk a little bit. I really like to get to know the people I'm talking to in the audience so I can figure out how many of you I can offend in the shortest period of time. So first, I'd like to ask for a show of hands of the people who are not from the United States. I want to welcome you. I will inadvertently probably offend some of you because of my cultural ineptitude. But I also want to apologize in advance because my talk is a bit geocentric and deals with a lot of things that are going on in the United States, but I do believe that some of the concepts that we're going to talk about are universal. And I hope that I don't bore those folks who are not familiar with some of the U.S. issues. Next, I'd like to find out who you are and how long you've been around the field. How many of you have been in the field of seating and wheel mobility for less than 5 years? Welcome, you're the future of the industry, and I really look forward to seeing you over and over again here. 5 to 10 years. 10 to 15 years. Some of the people on the right side are waiting for 35 years so they can raise their hands. Okay, 15 to 20. Okay, and 20 to 30. Holy Hannah. And more than 30. Proud. And proud of it. I guarantee you that the people in this room who have been around for a long time have gained a lot of knowledge and experience from being around. Now, I've been around for 35 years, and all I know I've become is a cynic. And that's what happens when you've been around for a while. You become cynical. And I think the presentation that I'm going to share with you will show you some of that cynicism, but it is also a different way of thinking about who we are and what we do and what the future holds for all of us in the area of seating and wheel mobility. Oh, thank you. I'm going to go behind the counter. I'm going to hide back here. That's good. Thank you. Okay. How many of you were at the International Seating Symposium in 1999? Good, so I can use the same jokes over and over again, because that's the last time I had the honor and the pleasure of keynoting the ISS. And the scary thing is that there's a whole lot about what I'm going to talk about that hasn't changed since 1999. And I think that's a significant problem that we're all going to have to come to grips with and figure out why. What it is about us as individuals in this field who resist change. Would a lot of you say you resist change? I know I do. I certainly do. Okay, let's see what we're going to talk about first. Well, I think we need the slides up. Very good. Thank you. This is definitely unofficial and unsanctioned, and I want to put that disclaimer in so that Mark doesn't have a hissy fit when I show some of these things. But this is the top 10 list of then and now. I want to sort of put some of the things about all of us into perspective. Now, this may not pertain to all of you, but I'm sure even those of you who wouldn't admit that it pertains to them, that it probably does. Let's look at the first one. Then it was seeds and stems. And now it's roughage. Number 9 of the then and now, we were all looking for the perfect high. And now we're looking for the perfect high yield mutual fund. The next one is your kid telling you, whatever. Well, where I am now, it's probably depends rather than whatever. Number 7 is peace now. Do we all remember this era? How many of you were peaceniks? How many of you don't admit that you're peaceniks, right? Well, then it was peace now, and now it's lease now. Number 6 is passing the driver's test. That was one of the most exciting things in any of our lives, right? When we finally passed the test, finally got to drive. Now, when I went to renew my license, I was concerned about passing the vision test. So things have changed considerably. Number 5 is getting out to a hip new joint. Do you remember Studio 54? Okay, at least you're aware of Studio 54, right? Well, now it's getting a new hip joint. Number 4 is a keg. Don't get ahead of me on it. You probably know what this one is. Now it's an EKG. Number 3 is 50 kinds of movie treats. You got this one coming up? Now it's 50 Shades of Grey. And number 2 is hoping for a BMW. Now we're hoping for a BM. And number 1 on the then and now is long hair and longing for hair. I'm going to get serious eventually, but it's hard to get serious because one of the reasons I think I've survived so long in the field, I never took myself very seriously. I took what I do very seriously, but never individually. Well, let's start with this. This presentation is my opinion about things. I am not giving you facts. I am not quoting research as Dr. Cooper and Dr. Boninger do, but I'm telling you what I think about things and observations that I've made. So I will offend some of you at some point during this. So because of that, Mark insisted that I put up this legal disclaimer. So if you would all read this over quickly, then we can continue. So tell me when you're done. You agree? Okay, we can go on then. First thing I want to do is tell you a story about the parable of the river. Now, there is no parable that doesn't work without a parable scroll. And this is my parable scroll. Actually, it's because I couldn't memorize the story, so I have a scroll. Once upon a time, in a village far, far away, people gathered for a picnic. As they shared food and conversation, someone noticed a baby in the river, struggling and crying. The baby was going to drown. Someone rushed to save the baby. Then they noticed another screaming baby in the river, and they pulled that baby out. Soon more babies were seen drowning in the river, and the townspeople were pulling them out as fast as they could. It took great effort, and they began to organize their activities in order to save the babies as they came down the river. As everyone else was busy in the rescue effort to save the babies, 2 of the townspeople started to run away along the shore of the river. "Where are you going?" shouted one of the rescuers. "We need you here to help save these babies." They answered, "We are going upstream to stop whoever is throwing them in." And I'll tell you, that struck me so strongly in a lot of different ways, and I think I would like to share some of those feelings about that with you today. Well, what's the moral of the story? Clearly, we need to do our part in rescuing those babies found floating from the river. Well, what's the parable? What's the analogy here to this sort of thing? Why am I bringing this up to you? I'll get to that in a minute. The second part is we also have to take the risk of raising our voices and asking why they're doing all these things to the poor babies. Why, in fact, are they doing it to us? And we'll talk about that in a minute. So let me bring up two things. We're going to have a dichotomy here between charity, in my mind, and system change in the other. Spending your effort and time pulling all those babies out of the river is the charity part of my discussion. You're giving something away, and I'll relate that to some of the things that we do also. And then the system change part, obviously, is changing the system. So charity, for us, for me at least, generous actions or donations to aid the poor, ill, or helpless. And then system change is the shift in the way a community thinks about dealing with issues and how they will provide, deliver services to its citizens, both people with disabilities and without disabilities. Well, how many of you spend more time than you get paid for in providing service to the people you work with? Okay, that's my definition of charity. You're giving something away that you should be paid for. That's charity. System change, on the other hand, obviously, is where you have to move from that charitable work or that work of spending all this time working for the benefit of the individual patient, client, consumer, whatever your nomenclature is, to working for more as a systematic change in how things are done. And that's what Don Clayback was talking about this morning to you. He's talking about systems change. But on the other hand, how can we ignore the needs of these individuals that they have right now? And that was Dr. Bonner's waiting for the cure sort of thing. You can't wait for the cure, you got to do something. So this is what my problem is. But I do believe that one of the problems that we had 15 years ago and the problems that we have now is we devalue our own worth in the process that we work in. We devalue it beyond recognition at times. And I believe that unless we change that attitude, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to be at the lower end of the healthcare ladder in a lot of ways. So in order to do system change, the first thing you have to do is have no more charity. Don't give it away. I never volunteered to do anything in my entire career that I used to get paid to do. I mean, I'd do other stuff, but I would not volunteer my time to do what I got paid to do on a regular basis because it devalued who I was and what I was doing. The second one is just say no. You have to say no. And the third time is to spend your own time, effort, resources to be an agent of change, which means that you have to spend your money and your time to make changes. And in terms of the best possible role model for this kind of behavior is an individual that you've already had a chance to talk to this morning, and that's Jerry Dickerson. Jerry is the master of saying no. And I mean that quite honestly. He has the ability to make it very clear that the only way that we're going to succeed is by valuing our services as to what they're worth. And he's one of the people that I respect in this field more than anybody else because of his integrity. He's a pain in the butt a whole lot of the time, but that's part of who he is. And I think that that's an important thing. So if you want to talk to somebody about systems change in seating and wheel mobility, at least in the area that Jerry's involved in, he can tell you some stories and give you some information and make sure you have a lot of time and buy him a beer. But Jerry, thank you. Thank you for all you do. I'm not going to embarrass anybody else in the audience, so we're finished with that. You are special. I want to talk a little bit about advocacy because I have a bit of a different view about advocacy than some of you might have. One who pleads or champions the cause of another. That's an advocate. You can be a self-advocate, you can be an advocate for other people. Well, I have a question that I ask myself. Given a finite amount of resources, does an advocate or advocacy effort deal with issues of rightness, fairness, and equality or equity? If you're an advocate, say you work for an organization that advocates for diagnosis X, are you trying to say that your diagnosis is more important than the other diagnoses? If you are an organization like a RESNA or an NCART or NARTS or any of the other ones in the field that are all sort of competing in a lot of ways for the same dollar, how do you deal with that? How do you understand it? And so I think that advocates have to realize that their cause is not as important as they may think it is to other people. I mean, this hit me very strongly when I read all the information about the Ice Bucket Challenge, and that there was $100 and some odd million collected for people with ALS. Well, the number of people with ALS reported in the United States is 36,000. So that 36,000 got $110 million worth of information. United Cerebral Palsy has almost 4 times that amount of people that they provide services for, but they didn't get any of that money. Why? Did MDA do a better job of positioning them, did the ALS folks position themselves better to get the money? I don't know what the answer is, but there's something wrong with this system of advocacy and the way it works. There are people out there who absolutely are sure that the need for the asparagus growers of America to get $1 million a year from Congress is just as important as funding complex rehab technology. And you would look at that and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it sure makes sense to all those asparagus growers. So we have to be aware of that. You know, we're not alone in the world. Disability is not the center of the world's focus. Whether it should or should not be, I'm not trying to make a value judgment. All I'm saying is it's not. So we have to think about advocacy and how we're going to deal with that. You know, how we allocate resources now and in the future is an important issue, because there are 2 ways to look at how you make decisions about giving resources to people. The first one is comparative justice, which is pretty much sort of the way we do it now. You have an assessment of individual needs. You have looking at the urgency of the condition, how quickly they need something. And then the decisions about who or which populations are more deserving of limited health care resources. Okay? That's sort of what we're doing now. And it sort of works. It sort of works. For general health care, I think it works pretty well. I just turned 65 and started on Medicare, which, if you really want to have a shock in your life, it was a big shock going from private insurance to Medicare. But Medicare is not bad for most everything that happens. I mean, Medicare is an anathema when we start talking about seating and wheel mobility and stuff like that, but it works. So, you know, so this is the way we do it now. Well, do we want to move to something more like this? It's not based on the claims of particular people. The resources are distributed according to economic or social principles rather than individual needs. How much could these people contribute to society if they got the equipment that they need? How much could they do if they had the equipment? I don't have answers to this. I honestly can't tell you, but I know that these are 2 systems that are out there. The one we have now is marginally working, but not working well enough, I think, to really take us forward with the new developments that both Rory and Dr. Boninger have talked about. Because one of the things that I would imagine that every supplier and every manufacturer in the room says when Dr. Boninger shows the slide, said, what's the Medicare code for that product? You know? That just happens because if we're not going to get paid for it, we can't see possibly how we're ever going to get that kind of equipment into the mainstream. I'm not sure we will or we won't, but it's difficult. You know, and I think we do have, my crystal ball is very, very foggy, but you think the resources are going to increase or decrease or remain the same? I don't know, but whichever way they go, the system that we have in place and the ability of the people involved in the field to control their own destiny requires that we change our behaviors. We change them significantly. And I think that that's been difficult for all of us to want to do over the years. The next thing I want to talk about is the technology knowledge gap. It's gratuitous, that's why I didn't say anything about it. Here's an issue that I feel very strongly about that I'm not sure everybody will agree about me with, but this first part, our industry has made enormous strides in delivering technology to meet the needs of people we serve. I'm not sure we've made huge strides in developing new and different approaches to technology, but what we've done is we've got better ways of providing that technology. Manufacturers have built more modular systems. We have more interchangeable equipment. The system is easier to deliver, easier to move forward. But I believe that we have not had corresponding advances in developing specialized pre-service education for the people who apply this technology. It just hasn't happened. If you look at 100 people who provide services in this field, you'll find people potentially with 100 different backgrounds. And what do they have in common? A desire to serve people. Is that enough? I'm not sure. But is passing a test enough? And I am AT and SMS certified through RESNA, and I'm not knocking the ATP or the SMS program. I'm just asking if that is truly enough in order to assure some things that we need to. And I say that this both for clinicians and suppliers, because the clinicians and suppliers who are in this room are the exception to the rule, because you're here. But the thousands of people who are providing powered wheelchair and other mobility devices with just an ATP background and don't have a whole lot of other education or experience, they may be doing a disservice to people. So I don't believe that the exam as it stands now is enough to differentiate the people who can or should or shouldn't be doing the work that we all do. I think that there needs to be a formalized pre-service curriculum. It doesn't have to be from one institution. And yeah, 3 of you like the idea, huh? And there's a wonderful example in the area of orthotics and prosthetics. We all sort of want to compare ourselves to the O&P community because they've been very successful. Now, Medicare has got them on the radar also at this point, but that's another issue. You can't get certified as a BOC or an ABC certified orthotist prosthetist without taking an NCOPE, which is their association, coursework. And then you have to have, after the coursework, you have to have an internship, okay? I mean, that's very, very different than what we have. But we want to be treated as the same as these people, but we don't want to pay the dues up front to do it. Now, can we actually do that or not? No. Continuing education is not enough. I can get stoned for that, saying that here, but it's not. It's not. You can't simply have 18 credits of continuing education and then take an exam and everybody feel really good about the fact that you're out there providing, thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment to people. It's not right, in my mind. And not just prep courses for taking the exams. To me, that's the absolute worst possible route for people to take. They sit and take a prep exam. The next day they take the test, and they remember just enough to pass the test. And I think that's not right. I've never agreed with that approach to people. And I'm not talking about the RESNA assistive technology course. That's a different story. That's an educational program that sits independent of preparing for the test, even though I think many people feel if they take that course, they can pass the exam. Now, formalized pre-service education, is it realistic? Well, probably not, at least not right now. Because the people who are, the amount of dollars that come out of the system in terms of profit for the companies that provide technology is not enough to put back into the system to get this pre-service education brought forward. Just seeing how the reaction to the SMS as a non-mandatory credential, as the ATP, The SMS numbers are not very high right now because there's no driving force. So is it realistic? It's probably not. But there are consequences. And the consequences is that we will be seen, and this is a terrible word, but our industry gets to be seen as bottom feeders. Because what has happened in the past is that there have been a bunch of companies out there that we've been judged on their example who are or were bottom feeders. So I think that there's a significant risk for us. I think that what I want to leave you with is this feeling that I have that everybody in our industry is waiting for somebody else to lead, is waiting for somebody else to take that step out in front and be the ones who really make things happen. We belong to organizations, we pay our dues, and we say that's enough. That organization should be doing the work for us. And having been involved with President of RESNA and President of NARTS and on the executive committee of NCART, I've seen that happen, and it happens with a lot of different organizations. We don't have the 2010 rule, we have the 199 rule. 1% of the people in the industry do 99% of the work, and we just can't do it. There's not enough. So I'm going to talk about what I feel is the need for what you need to do, what we need to do in order to change things around. We've got to be the first fish to jump out of the fishbowl and jump into new waters. I think the reality is that, and I'm going to read some of this to you, only because it's important enough for me that I want you to see it and hear it both. The reality is that the constant in an inconsistent professional world is change. That's pretty reasonable. All we have is change that we can be absolutely certain of. Things are going to change. Tomorrow inevitably will be different than today. And with each dawn, we emerge into a new world, a competitive world that forces us to adapt, keep up, or fail. How many people thought 10 years ago that their seating clinics wouldn't be around anymore? We all know people whose seating clinics haven't been around. We all know very, very good suppliers whose companies aren't viable. We know manufacturers who aren't around anymore. And there's been consolidation, and there's been buyouts, and all sorts of things like that. But change is our reality. As we watch the panorama of change pass before us, some of us will see more than others. Some of us have the vision. Some of us will have better depth perception. We'll be able to see how things are going to change and which way we need to move. And some of us will scramble up to a better vantage point. Some of us want to take the higher ground and see what's going on. Seeing the future and where our profession fits is the chief responsibility of leaders. But I want to emphasize that a leadership is not a position, but it's an activity. We have people who are elected as leaders, but everyone needs to be a leader. Everyone needs to get out in front of the problem. And if you don't, and the problem doesn't go away, hey guys, you're to blame. You can make changes. You will make changes if you try. Our industry and profession needs leaders with three attributes. We need 20/20 foresight, so we can see what's coming down the pike. We need 20/20 hindsight, so we can make sure that we won't make some of the same mistakes we made in the past. But what we really need is 20/20 insight, so that we understand what the problem is, because we end up in our industry solving solutions that don't solve problems. And that's a difficulty. We work very hard at doing something, and then by the time we finish doing it, there's another problem that's in the way. And here's the big one. I can hear you saying in the back of your minds, I don't have time to lead. Does that strike home with some of you? You're busier than you possibly can be. You have your home life, you have your work life, you have your community life. Well, time management, according to John Maxwell, is an oxymoron. You cannot manage time. Time is beyond our control, and the clock keeps ticking regardless of how we lead our lives. Priority management is the answer to maximizing the time we have. And that's what I ask you to do. Adjust your priorities so that making systems changes in your working environment and not only concentrating about pulling the poor babies from the river. I think we can make a change for the better, and I think we can see a change in the field in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Hopefully I can come back then again and speak again. Here's my email number, email address, so if you want to get contact me, hate mail is accepted. I do have search engines that can find you if you write nasty things about me. But anyway, thank you all for your time and have a great day.
On behalf of the 31st International Seating Symposium, the University of Pittsburgh, and the Department of Rehab Science and Technology, I say on behalf of ISS University and the Department of Rehab Science, we wanted to present you with an achievement award for your lifetime of excellence, leadership, and dedication to the field of rehabilitation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Roy.
They like having you famous there. I mean,
Don't run off just yet. We're not quite done with you yet, Simon. As Mark has mentioned a few times, this is we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Department of Rehabilitation, Science, and Technology, and in order to do that, we've had some medallions created that we'll be presenting today and tomorrow to a few individuals that we think have contributed to the mission of our department, either within our department or globally. And so I'd like to also present Simon with one of those medallions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.